last class we actually discussed about this the quantized energy levels, various types of energy levels, that is electronic energy levels, vibrational and rotational, and we saw that the energy difference, how they differ, and that's why they appear in different regions of electromagnetic radiation, right? Okay, now as we started with the definition of spectroscopy, that is interaction of electromagnetic radiation with matter. So first we discussed about electromagnetic radiation, right? And then we discussed about the matter, the nature of the matter itself, the energy levels in the matter. Now let us see about the word interaction, right? What type of interaction does it does? What type of interaction does the matter perform or undergo with when it comes in contact with electromagnetic radiation? That gives us the spectrum. See, I have a chart here. I have taken this chart from Fundamental of Molecular Spectroscopy by Colin M. Banwell, right? See, this chart shows the type of spectra that is occurring in various electromagnetic regions, right? Now one thing you must keep in mind, that though these are depicted like this, right? This is the microwave region, this is the radio frequency, right? We say like it, but these are by no means a line of demarcation, right? They are fuzzy. They are not that sharp lines of boundary lines, right? Okay, just see, let us have a quick look what the interactions is happening. See, for NMR, that is nuclear magnetic resonance, and ESR, electron spin resonance, of this we will study NMR in details in one of the subsequent classes. ESR is not included, but they are the spin change, right? They are the resonance spectroscopies, right? What the NMR involves? NMR actually involves the spin change of the nuclear state, right? Spin of the nucleus, you can see in the picture. See, if these are the nucleuses, right, this is the spin of the nucleus is changing, right, from, suppose it is counterclockwise to clockwise or something like that. So there is a energy level difference in energy of that inner state, and that is in the region of this radio wave. It is very low in energy, right? So as we are going from left to right, the energy is increasing. And then comes this ESR, right? ESR means electron spin resonance. This deals with the spin of the electron, right? Now see, in both the cases, if you can see, if it is spinning, right, suppose this electron, this is a charged particle, and if it is spinning, you can view it as a small magnet, right? If it is a small magnet, it is like a small magnet here, right? If you can view it. Now if it is spinning like this, and if it is flipping, the spin is flipped, that means the magnet is also flipped. So they can interact with the magnetic field, right? So that is the interaction. So this type of interaction, a change in some these properties. So one of the properties has to change in such a way that it can interact either with the electric field or with the magnetic field of the electromagnetic radiation. Otherwise, such a change will not bring about the spectra, right? It will not interact, and there will be no absorption also. Okay. Now see, in the microwave region, right, we know that they deal with the rotation, right? This rotation. Rotation of the molecule, right? So it is rotating like this. And in infrared, the vibration of the molecule. And so as we have seen that rotational energy levels are lower than the vibrational, so they appear in the microwave region itself, whereas infrared is a bit higher in energy than the microwave, which brings about the vibrational energy transitions, right? So and higher energy is required to knock out an electron in the valence shell of a molecule or the valence orbital of a molecule to the next higher level, right? So that's why visible and ultraviolet regions are used for this one, right? This kind of spectroscopy. And in the X-ray spectroscopy, and inner electron is transformed in the higher state. That's why more energy is needed, and these happens in this X-ray and also in the gamma ray region. In gamma ray region, of course, is very high energy and involve rearrangement of nuclear particles. Right? See, the nuclear is now the shape of the nuclear is changing. Right? So this involves gamma ray. This requires gamma ray. The calculations of particular energy differences I am not showing. Right? You can do it as a simple exercise, right? And they will be corresponding to the this h nu. This nu, of course, being the corresponding wavelength. You can easily calculate the energy regions for this particular transitions, right? Now, see, for ultraviolet, let us see what type of interaction is there. Right? See, an electron is moving from one place to another. So, a movement of electron will what? It will generate an electronic charge. I mean, electronic charge is flowing from one place to another. So, there is a consequent change in the electric dipole, right, of the molecule itself. This gives rise to a spectrum. Why? By interaction with the electric field component of the electromagnetic radiation. So this way there is some interaction. So there has to have some interaction. I mean, the change would produce in such a way that it will interact with either the electrical field or the magnetic field. Right? Now see, let us discuss a bit in details for this interaction for microwave and the infrared, because it will be much more clear. Right? See, suppose there is rotational, right? Let us take rotational. Okay. So in rotational spectroscopy, let us take two diatomic molecules. Say one, say HCl, another say H. These are two molecules, right? You can rotate it along them, right? You can rotate it along this axis, right? You can rotate it like this. You can also rotate these. Also, you can be rotated. Now see what is happening. In this HCl molecule, we know that it has a partial positive charge, this hydrogen, whereas the chlorine has a partial negative charge. Right? So what is the direction of the dipole? The direction of the dipole vector will be like this. Okay, as I have written it here. Right? Now, suppose I let me draw it again. Okay, Cl. So I am not drawing the plus and minus charges again. So here the dipole direction is like this. Suppose I rotate it 90 degree now clockwise. So I have Cl here, H here. What is the direction of the dipole? Now the direction of the dipole is like this. And again 90 degree. So Cl here. So now the direction of the dipole here, and again coming back to our original position, we have okay. See what has changed. Now if you plot the vector of your this vector of the dipole, right, against time. Suppose this is time in this direction, and here the vertical component of the dipole, right? Suppose say vertical component of the dipole. How it will look like? See, see, it will now look like, suppose we are starting it here, right? So it is flat, so in this direction it was, right? So it will be like this, and again, okay, so it will correspond to something like this, right? So this corresponds to here, this corresponds here. So it will look like this. See, this curve, I mean, if I have drawn it, could have drawn it correctly, right? Then it will look like similar to the electric component of the electromagnetic spectrum. As such, these will now interact, right? So such a rotation will interact. Now see, because there is a change in the dipole, right? The dipole is changing, right? The component of the dipole is changing. The dipole is not changing, sorry, the component of the dipole is changing the direction. That's why they can interact. Now suppose this H2 molecule or Cl2, right? Now they do not have any dipole. Whatever rotation you do, that will be flat, isn't it? So they will not interact. The rotation of H2 and Cl2 will not interact with the microwave region of the that is our microwave region of the electromagnetic spectrum. Right? That's why we say that these molecules are microwave inactive. Microwave inactive, and they do not show rotational spectra, whereas these are active and they will show rotational spectra. Right? So just by rotation, I mean H2 molecule and Cl2 molecule can rotate. There is no, I mean, of course they are rotating, right? But those rotation we cannot see, we cannot observe by microwave, right? We cannot see them because they will not interact. They will not show us the, I mean, these rotational properties by observing these microwaves because they will not interact. Okay. Similarly, for say vibrational spectra, right, movement that is in our infrared region, right, what do you see? Let us take the example of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, we know that is a linear molecule. Right? Now suppose, as we said, let it vibrate. How can they vibrate? I think we discussed in the last class also that they can vibrate like this. Right? Suppose these two oxygen becomes longer at the same time, at by same amount, right? So what is that? What is the dipole? It's already 2 delta plus and delta minus, isn't it? It's like this. So the charge will remain same here again. There is no change in dipole as such, right? Because both are in the, I mean, both are of same length. They have extended to same extent, right? So there is no change in dipole. Again, if you see, if they are compressed, suppose this is the normal condition. This is the normal condition, so there is no dipole. Now, even if you compress them, right, there is again no dipole, no change in dipole, right? So these bonds are called IR inactive. Right? We will again study them in details when we study the IR spectroscopy, just to show that how why we say that it must interact. That's why I am giving this example, right? So these are IR inactive. Right? Whereas suppose you see, now let me draw it like this. Okay. Say this is now the normal carbon dioxide, right? So again I am drawing it. So if this is the normal carbon dioxide, I should have drawn it. Okay, let us the axis start from here, right? So here it is now, there is no dipole change. Fine. Now, as we have described in the previous class also, there may be some asymmetric stretch also, right? This was symmetric. Asymmetric means when the one bond elongates, the other bond is compressed. Now if this is happening, right, what will happen? This dipole will have some component in this direction, isn't it? As such, suppose say it goes up here. Again it relaxes back to our normal position. Okay, so again it becomes 0. Now this bond is compressed and this bond elongates. So the component is like this. So it becomes here. And then again it goes back to normal position. And you see again this kind of form is being formed. Right? So the component of the dipole is changing with time. Right? Component of the dipole. Now this kind of interaction this kind of vibration, when the component of the dipole is changing with time, will be IR active, right? These vibrations will be IR active and will give rise to these IR bands, whereas this kind of symmetrical stretching will be IR inactive. Another type of stretching, if you remember, we discussed in, for example, for water, but same will be the case also here. Suppose it is like this. Now there can be vibrations of this mode. Again it may come back to normal mode, and then again right? So this is another type of vibrations, right? You can see they are also associated with dipole change, right? So here it will be 0. Here there will be a component in this direction, right? Again 0. Again there will be a component in this direction. So again there will be a change like this, right? So these two are, the IR active modes of carbon monoxide, which these are not. So this is not, we are not discussing here that what are the modes that will be active. We are just discussing that how the electromagnetic radiation interacts and why the electromagnetic radiation interacts. Right? This is the reason why electromagnetic radiation interacts, because these dipole changes are in the same form as that of the electric component of the electromagnetic radiation. Okay. So yes, this was the about interactions. Fine. Now let us go to one more point. See, one more point means very important point, of course. See, you have seen the spectra, right? And we have drawn these kind of things also. That this is E1, this is E2, and if there is an energy gap, this is delta E, and we will see the spectrum. In this case it will be absorption. If it relaxes down, we will see the emission spectrum. Fine. Now see, this not only depends on this, quantization, right? If there is no quantization, we could not have seen it. But this is largely depends on the amount of energy gap and the population. Population means what? Population means the number of the particles, right? In this case, the electrons, the molecules, or whatever, in a particular energy state. What are the populations possible there? Now there has to have a population difference. See, now if we for the time being forget about electrons and atoms, suppose say we have a system like this where you can pour water. Now if by somehow you have water like this, the two levels are different, what you will see? You will see a flow of water, right? Flow of water to make it in the same level, right? Now once it becomes in the same level, suppose they are now in the same level, right? Will there be flow of water? Right? Will there be flow of water? Yes, the answer is yes. there will be flow of water, but you cannot see it, right? We cannot see the flow of water, but the molecules of water will go from this side to this side, and the others will be coming from this side to this side. These to and from motions will continue, that will not stop, right? But in our naked eye, with our eyes, we cannot see that flow, right? This is why the population difference is required. If there is no population difference, right, suppose there is 10 molecules or 10 electrons in this energy level also, and similarly there are 10 electrons in this energy level also. So and if they are equally populated, so by some energy they are going up, and also at the same time they are also relaxing down, so they will cancel out each other and we will see no spectrum, right? That's why the population difference is required, and thankfully for us that Boltzmann has given that, right? You know that Boltzmann constant. So the same scientist Boltzmann has given the distribution formula, right? That n upper means population of the upper state by n lower. This ratio is important. That means for a transition to happen, you can easily understand that this should be very high. This n lower should be so high than the n upper that there we can see the difference, right? If they are very close to each other, then they will be equally possible, right? Going from down to lower level to the upper level, and coming from relaxing from the upper level to the lower level will be equally possible, and we cannot see the spectrum. This is given by e to the power delta E by kT, where E is the energy gap and K is the Boltzmann constant, and what is the value of it? 1.381 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 23 joule per Kelvin. Okay, so this is the Boltzmann constant, and T is the absolute temperature. So as this is in negative power, right, and you want to lower this value, right? So how can you do that? If you increase this delta E, what will happen? This numerator will increase, and as such this value will decrease because it has negative power. And what will happen if you increase the temperature? If you increase the temperature, then the reverse will happen. This value, the total value of this power will decrease, and as a result this number will increase, the ratio will increase, right? So we will not see that. Now let us take specific examples. Suppose say in a IR band, right? Suppose in a IR section a vibration is, suppose we have a energy gap of say 2000 centimeter inverse. Let us see what will be the population difference, and if we can see it. The 2000 centimeter inverse will come around, I think we have did that in the last class also, right? It will become around 4 into 10 to the power minus 20 joule, right, per photon. Okay, now if we put these things in this equation at say 25 degree centigrade, that is what? That will be equivalent to 298 Kelvin. So in this case, n upper by n lower will be equal to e to the power minus 4 into 10 to the power minus 20 joule. It will cancel out, of course, and 1.381 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 23 joule Kelvin inverse into 298 Kelvin. So these are cancelled out to become a pure number, and yes, so 9 it will come around. Let me do the calculations. Yeah, so it will be minus sorry 9.722. Okay, so this will again come around 6.0 into 10 to the power minus 5. Okay, so is this number big or small? Okay, compared to this one, this is quite small. This means what? This means out of say if you so out of say 20,000 or molecules or 20,000 molecules or electrons, whatever, you have only one of them in the upper, right? So the population is quite small in the upper state, and this kind of spectroscopy is very sensitive, right? You can easily observe them, right? But this is not the case for say NMR, right? For NMR, this energy gaps is in the region of say energy gaps are in the region of 1.33 into 10 to the power minus 25 joules. See, right? Now if you put this value here, right, with the same calculation, just we are changing it because these two remain same. In the room temperature, this ratio for NMR upper to N lower is nearly 1, right? 0.99. So it is nearly 1. This means what? This means that upper and the lower level are equally populated, and at that point of time you will not be able to see any spectra, right? Because number of molecules going from down to up and the number of molecules going from states from up to down are equally feasible and will be equal in number, and they will cancel out the effect of each other. So for NMR we need very lower temperature. See, actually NMR experiments are done at very low temperatures due to this population thing, right? So if you lower the temperature, then you can increase the population of the ground state or the lower state by some extent, right? And you can increase the sharpness or the effectiveness of the spectroscopy. For this electronic transition, right? For electronic transitions, right? Transitions, these n ratios is nearly say 10 to the power more than 30 to 40 like this, right? So they are minus I should say minus, yeah, minus 30 to minus 40, something like this. So they are usually negligible. The upper level is populated in a negligible, you can say, for practical purposes you can confidently say there is no electrons in the upper state, right? All of them are present in the ground state because the energy gap is so high, right? So this was one of the discussions about this population, which is actually gives what? The intensity. This gives us the intensity, how intense the peak will be. Okay. Next topic of discussion is our selection rules. Selection rules. Now each of these spectroscopy have their own set of selection rules, right? They differ. Electronic spectroscopic selection rules is not same as that of vibrational spectroscopy or that of rotational, which differ again from the NMR spectroscopy, right? They have different selection rules, but in this here we'll just briefly touch what selection rule is, and we'll study in details in the respective spectra. Selection rule is very important in spectroscopy. Suppose say there are several electronic states, right? This is the ground state, and these are the excited state. Are all these possible? Right? So you can say that, okay, I can see 3 bands like this, but maybe say these are not possible. Right? Only this is possible. So these are the selection rules given, right? And they say which is allowed transition and which is forbidden. So the expected one, that is called allowed, which follows the selection rule, and there are some transitions that are forbidden. So these forbidden transitions, you can draw it in pen and paper, but by applying the selection rule you will see they are actually forbidden. Now let us take the example of electronic transition only, right? So okay, last if you say for vibrational states, so for vibrational states, right, so the selection rule states that the delta vibrational, the quantum number should be, for that chain, should be equal to plus or minus 1. So either it can come down or go up, whatever it is. So this should be plus and minus 1. That means from V equals to 0 to V equals to 2 or 3, it is not possible, it is forbidden, right? To V equals to 3. So you can draw it in pen and paper, but this is forbidden by these selection rules. All these selection rules are not arbitrary, they have mathematical background and they can be quantum mechanically proved, right? So these are not arbitrary, but we will not go into the mathematics, we will just see what are the selection rules. So these selection rules tells us that which bands will be allowed and which will be forbidden, right? Now there are some relaxations also. There are some, because everyone in the in the society, everyone does not follow rule. As such, these rules are also sometimes broken. How they are broken? By breaking this strictness. Right? Suppose say in electron spectroscopy, the selection rule is delta L. Sorry, it should be plus minus 1. Delta L should be plus minus 1. And delta L means the azimuthal quantum number should change. That means for s orbital, what is the azimuthal quantum number? For 0. Right? For p, it's 1. For d, it's 2. That means from s to p, if you go, the delta L equals to plus 1, this is allowed. From p to d, if you go, the again delta L is plus 1, this is also allowed, but you cannot promote an electron from S to D, where it will be now delta plus minus 2. So this is not allowed. And similarly, delta L will be 0 for S to S transition, right? So this is also not allowed. D to D transition, this is also not allowed. Okay, these are forbidden transitions. S to S and D to D. See, pictographically and very basically we can think of it, we can explain this one, S to S. Suppose you are transforming an electron from say 1s to 2s. Right? 1s electron to 2s. Right? This is 2s. Now if you do this, right, there will be no change, because this was spherically symmetrical. The electronic charge when the electron was here was spherically symmetrical. When it goes to 2s, again it is again spherically symmetrical. So there is no dipole change, right? As such, they will not interact with this electromagnetic radiation. So these are forbidden. Similarly, the DD or P2P, these are also forbidden. Okay, but see, as we have said that P2P DD transition is forbidden, but I think we have already heard about this, that the color of this copper sulfate is due to DD transition, right? This blue color, right? Why is it so? This DD transition actually occurs, but the intensity will be lower, because these are forbidden. So intensity will be lower, they will be not that dark, right? The intensity will be lower, but they are allowed by breaking of these selection rules by vibrations. That we'll discuss in details when we go to this electronic spectroscopy chapter. But this is the selection rules. That what are selection rules? Then selection rules are a set of rules which says which are allowed transition and which are forbidden. Okay. Now, one more important thing to in spectroscopy is line width. These are topics which are general for all the spectroscopy. That's why I am discussing it here. See, line width. Right? Now, I have drawn these kind of diagrams again and again. Right? So, if it is emission, it will be like this. So, if you plot it, say this is frequency and this is the absorption. Right? So what you will see, suppose this is delta E, right, and it has a corresponding frequency H nu 1 say, and this is also same, right, and suppose it has another transition, this molecule, right, where there is a bigger larger energy gap. Suppose this is E del E2 and this corresponds to H nu 2, right. Suppose this is nu 1 and this is nu 2. So what you will see, you will just see two lines, right? Because there is no other absorptions here, because the system is quantized, it should exactly match, and you have delta, the line should be vertical, right? Line should be vertical, okay. So you have just two lines here. Same as that the picture, if you can recall the picture of atomic spectroscopy, right? It had only lines, okay. So this would be the absorption spectra, right? So we have only lines, but practically if you have seen the absorption spectroscopy, it looks like this, right? It's broad lines. This is called the line width, and why it is caused, right? Now we will discuss these things. Why these line widths are caused? That means there is a maxima, of course, right? Same as our if you remember that when we draw the electron density curve for the probability density for electrons, right, there was a maxima and that correspond to Bohr orbital. Same is the case here, right? This corresponds to this ideal situation, the gap, energy gap, but there are vibrations here and there also, where also there the energies are absorbed. And why it is so? Why it is so? So this is our next what we will discuss now. Now there can be various ways why this line is broadened. Right? This first one is say collision. Obviously this line is broadened because very close to this there are also other energy levels. Of course, that's why these things are happening, right? So some lower and some higher. So if you have a picture like this, then only you can have transitions like this, right? So why are they happening? First is called collision broadening, right? Broadening, right? Collision broadening. Now one more thing I have to tell you, that see, we are seeing this in instruments. Now in instruments, this light that is coming out is actually measured by a detector, right? Now the light that falls in the detector is through a slit, small slit. Now these slit, however small they are not infinitely small, right? They are not 1 nanometer of wavelength, or very small in length, right? They are some, through them not only a single wavelength but a mixture of wavelength can enter, right? As such, there can be a fuzziness in the detector itself, from the detector itself. But there are some reasons which is beyond control. that slit length you can modify when the technology is increasing, I mean technology is upgrading, so you can prepare more and more sophisticated instrument which has more and more narrow slit length, and you can decrease the broadening. That is the instrumental error, right? So an instrument that was used in 1950s is much would have given less accurate spectra than instrument which is built up in 2020, right? Now the technology is much advanced. Okay, that was due to technology, but there are some inherent thing which is beyond our control. Now see this collision broadening. What is collision broadening? See, in liquid or gaseous state in which the spectra is broadly measured, in solid state also it is measured, and in solid state collision broadening is actually minimized. This collision broadening is due to the molecules are colliding, right? The particles are colliding with each other, frequently colliding with each other, and as such what they do, they actually change the energy of everything. Change the energy levels of, it can change the energy levels of rotational, vibrational, and also electronic, right? Of course mainly with the electronic, because when they collide, the electrons which are on the outermost level are affected mostly, right? As such their electronic energy levels are changed. Changed means not very much changing, they are very close to each other. I mean, if this is the ideal one, then maybe with collision one is gaining energy, another is losing energy, so it will be something like this, right? A band type of structure, as we said, right? Now different types of molecule, so the sample will have different types of molecules, molecules with different types of energies, excited state energies, right? So as such we will do what? Okay, I should have drawn it here, right? So the sample will have different molecules with different types of energies that are in ground state, right? So as such transition will also take place from various right? So this gives rise to various absorptions that centered around that ideal one, right? This is if the ideal one, that is the lambda max, we say this is the maximum absorption, where the maximum it is absorbed, because most of the molecule is there, but due to collision there are some other energies also. That's why we see this broadening. Okay, another one is Doppler effect, right? Doppler broadening. So what is Doppler effect? I think you all know from the sound chapter of physics. You can easily say what is Doppler effect. Now this is what, say the molecule is going away, moving away from the source or coming towards the source, right? On this there is a change in the frequency that it is absorbing, right? It is seeing what it is absorbing, right? So this, due to this Doppler effect, there is also changing, and there is equal probability that molecule is going this side and also maybe going away from the source, right? Or the detector, right? So these effects, again this Doppler effect, this is also beyond our control, but we can minimize these two things to beat. Why? By diluting, right? If you dilute a solution, right, go on diluting, then this collision broadening will decrease, right? And of course if you cool the temperature, right, if you cool the sample, this collision again will decrease. This can be controlled to some extent, not to 100%, but you can do this to some extent, right? But there is one point which is beyond our control of everything, which is inherent, right? If you even take a single molecule, right, if you can take theoretically a single molecule, it will not collide with other molecules, right? Then also we will see the broadening due to this third effect, which is the Heisenberg effect. Heisenberg brought in uncertainty principle, right? Due to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. See, if you remember, we talked about conjugate variables, right? The variables whose the dimensions, the product of the dimensions in joule second will follow Heisenberg's principle. So what are those? See, delta time again, right? So this joule second, you see, they have the same joule second, so it is nearly 10 to the power minus 34, right? Joule second. Okay, now what is delta E? Delta NB can be written as H into delta nu. What is delta nu? This is the uncertainty in frequency. Right. These broadening are nothing but these uncertainties, right? Suppose this is the maxima, so absorption here also, so there is some uncertainty. So this is the uncertainty. If you put this here, we can write this, H will be cancelling out, so delta nu will be 1 upon, or it will be 1 upon 2 pi delta t. Okay, so greater the uncertainty in time, smaller will be the uncertainty in frequency, and lower the uncertainty in time, greater the uncertainty will be in frequency. So, and what is now this uncertainty in time? What is this time? This is the relaxation time, right? Suppose you have a molecule here, you can excite a molecule or an electron in the upper level. Now it will not, if you just remove the source of excitation, it will just not remain here. It will again fall down to its ground state. Either by, it can do it in two ways, either by emitting the radiation same amount, that is called emission spectroscopy, or by what? It is colliding with other molecules, so it will transfer its energy to other molecules also. But by somehow it will relax down again to the ground state. This is called relaxation. Relaxation. And this is the relaxation time. Relaxation time. Right. This our delta t. The time that is it spends in the excited state. Okay. Now this is different for different type of spectroscopy. The electronic relaxation time is not same as the nuclear relaxation times. They have different scales. Right. Let us just take two examples. Right. Suppose let us say a lifetime of 10 to the power minus 8 seconds. Another example, let us say lifetime of 10 to the power minus 7 seconds. So this is of electron spin states, right? So this is of electron spin state, and this is of electronic state itself. Electronic state and electronic spin state, right? So this is electronic spin state, and this is the electronic state itself. Okay. So they are tens of second apart, right? In the regions. They are not perfect numbers, but they are in these regions. So if you put them in this section, your delta nu will be what? 1 upon 2 pi delta t. So it will be around here, it will give 10, right? So I am just ignoring this 2 pi, I am just reciprocating the delta t, right? So it will be this second inverse, that is 10 to the power 8 Hertz. So this is our uncertainty. Can you imagine? This is the uncertainty, right? So 10 to the power 10 is the uncertainty. So this is very big, right? This uncertainty is very, very big. Right? Now let us see this uncertainty in ESR. See here delta nu will be 10 to the power 7 hertz. Now if I say which uncertainty is lower, of course this ESR, right, and not this one. But these ESR peaks are much more broad. Why? Now this uncertainty will have to be compared with the actual values, right? What is the actual value? What is the actual range of these transitions? These electronic transitions occur in the range of 10 to the power 14 to 10 to the power 16 hertz. They occur in this region, and compared to this, you see 10 to the power 8 by 10 to the power 14, right? So this broadening will be what? This broadening, this will give you the broadening, this will be around 10 to the power minus 6 hertz. Right? So so both are hertzes, so this will be around 10 to the power minus 6. So this is much lower, right, smaller. Whereas in this case, in case of ESR, the spectra actually takes place around 10 to the power 8 to 10 to the power 9, right? See, compared to this is large now. Compared to 10 to the power 8, 10 to the power 7 is large. It is nearly 10%, right? 1% to 10%. But compared to 10 to the power 14, 10 to the power 8 is not that large, right? Though the uncertainty is large. So this uncertainty leads to our broadening of this spectra. We do not see a line, we see, you can say that they are a bunch of lines, as we read in the solid state. So you can see the band here, right? We do not see a perfect line here in real cases. Okay, now this is inherent. This Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is inherent, and so we cannot eliminate this by any way. However sophisticated the instrument is, we cannot eliminate this thing, right? This uncertainty. Okay, so this was discussion about our interaction, this population selection rules, and this line width. We'll end our discussion by just one more topic, right? I think I will not discuss instrumentation in this part, because instrumentations we will discuss separately for separate spectroscopies. We'll just discuss one more thing. Transformation, right? I don't know if you have read it in mathematics class. You may read it in details there, but we'll see how it is helpful in spectroscopy, right? This Fourier transformations, right? Now Fourier transformation means you are changing the domain, right? You will just change the domain. Why? First of all, why it is required, right? Why it is done? Why it is done in spectroscopy? Suppose you are doing this IR spectroscopy, right? Then what it is actually done in IR spectroscopy, we'll read in details why we will study the IR spectroscopy or EV spectroscopy. But for the time being, let us see what the instrumentation is. Suppose this is the sample, right? And you pass the range of frequencies, right? You pass one frequency one after another, right? Suppose say 2000 centimeter inverse, then 2001 centimeter inverse, then 2002 centimeter, so go on like this, right? Slowly, and you see what is the absorption, and you get the spectra, right? So this is one of the way, and in fact it was done in previous days like this. But this is very time consuming, isn't it? If you have to pass say 1000 wave numbers or 1000 or 10,000 wavelengths through a small sample, it will take a day to record one sample. So modern day spectrometer, they do what? They give away all the wavelengths together, all the frequencies they pass through the sample together. All of them is passed together, and whatever they are coming out, they are either coming out in the uninterrupted or unabsorbed, or they are absorbed to some extent. Whatever be the case, they are coming out together and they are recorded in the spectra, right? The spectrogram. Right? So what it will look like? It will look like something like this. So suppose say there are some sine waves, right? So these are one of the sine wave. Now there can be one more sine wave with more higher frequency, right? So there can be longer frequency also. So there I have drawn three sine waves of different frequencies, right? Now this will not give me anything. It will be very complicated, right? Suppose there are 1,000 sine waves like this. How can you see them? You cannot separate them, right? This will be very clumsy, right? So here in this section you have what with time, right? So with time, that is in units of seconds, you have this one, right? Now if you just reciprocate it, so here is the intensity and this is the time. If you just reverse it, right? So inverse it, what will happen? So the unit was here was second, here the unit will be second inverse, and this is what? Second inverse is our frequency. Now you see, if you plot the frequencies, there are only three frequencies, isn't it? It looks like this, but there are only three frequencies. One, maybe here 1, 2, and maybe here another one. Why different intensities? Because their amplitudes are not same, so their intensities will be different, right? Maybe three different, or it may be same also, but it will be like this, right? This is our Fourier transformation of IR and NMR. Mostly in IR it is done, and IR and NMR, because otherwise they would take whole day or even 2 days to do one sample, right? So this is our Fourier transformation spectroscopy, right? So this was our today's discussion about the common things which are related to mostly all of them spectroscopy, that is how they interact, the population, how it helps. The population of the ground state is more important. The excited state, the lower the population of the excited state, much better it is, and which shows the sensitivity. So electron spectroscopy will be more sensitive than the NMR, but there are instrumental ways, technological ways to increase them, the sensitivity. Selection rules, very important, different for different spectroscopies, but they shows us that all the vibration or all the possible transitions might not be possible. There are some selection rules. Suppose one of the selection rules in vibrational spectroscopy in IR is there has to have a change in dipole moment, right? So in the this symmetrical stretching, we saw that there was no change in dipole moment, so it was IR inactive, right? Then we saw how the line width, right, is affected by collision, by Doppler and effect, and by Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And lastly, we just introduced Fourier transformation, how it helps in spectroscopy. Okay, in the next lecture we'll start specific spectroscopic techniques, right?